about 5 to 10 times as much wind power potential as we currently consume. So we need to really come up with smart ways of integrating wind power with our other resources.
It's the 1960s and 70s mentality. It's centralized control, distributed to all the peons out there. There's resources around us, all around us, that we could be leveraging that we're not. We're just relying on some centralized power plant hundreds of miles away. With wind turbines, you can actually become a source of power right at your house.
Wind opened up the West. When the buffalo herds were removed and their ranchers were coming on the scene, they needed water in dry, arid areas. So the idea was to use wind. So what they did was put water pumpers up that would pump water out of the ground and into troughs and water their cattle. The next leap in technology would be the electrical side, using wind for electrical generation.
Back when homesteads first started getting settled, you know, a lot of the rural area wasn't electrified. You know, farmers had no way of getting power. You know, they had to burn gas lanterns or light candles in the evening. So what would happen on farms is that farmers would set up their own wind turbines and they would generate their own power. You know, just small amounts of power. They had to be very economically in how they used it locally on their homesteads. But they did it themselves. And then the provincial utility came in and essentially started rolling out the grid to the farmers. And so market forces being what they are, the utility essentially persuaded the farmers to give up their wind turbines and just buy all the electricity from a central point.
In 1949, the SAS Power Act, Saskatchewan Power Corporation Act, was placed, but also the Rural Electrification Act as well. So literally, a lot of the small farms didn't have access to electricity, and it was really you know, SAS Power's efforts of joining all the utilities and building transmission lines to bring power out to the small rural community. And as a result, they started using electricity for their pumps and for their needs versus a lot of the you know, the older windmill type applications, right?
And now people are starting to look at actually going back and sort of swinging the pendulum back towards the middle, where instead of relying entirely on centrally produced energy distributed over the grid, we now actually complement it with energy that's produced locally.
I think there should be a wind turbine on every farm. The idea is that it does good for the grid, it does good for the farmer, and it's a free resource. There's no reason why we can't do it, and we have a historical base to start from. When I moved back to Saskatchewan from the US, I was interested in wind because there was no wind turbines around here. I knew California had net metering since 1995, so they already had policies. There was wind turbines down there. You could drive down the highway in California and you can spot turbines along the interstates. They were the first North American jurisdiction that had net metering. In 1995, the first net metered install was done.
Our local utility has had interconnection guidelines for over 10 years. Back in the day, in the late 90s, you could connect to the grid, but any excess that you made on your wind turbine or solar unit was bought by the utility for 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So it just didn't make it very economically viable.
I started Raum Energy basically as a vehicle to promote wind power. I was promoting the policy changes with both governments. So just trying to rattle the cage, if I could put it that way, and just let them know that there is better ways to do this. I do believe I was just one of several voices that were approaching the government to get on the bandwagon and get net metering and those sort of policies implemented. So a lot of lobbying, wrote some articles, gave some talks, and then in the background I thought, look, there's an opportunity here where we could do something hands-on. not just change the policies, but we could actually create the equipment to get into the wind rush, if we could put it that way. So the idea was start off with small system. I could do part of the engineering my own. The wind turbine systems are far too complicated for one guy to do it all really well. Usually you have one aspect of it and you need to hire specialists from other areas to do other parts of it. As time went on, I started hiring grad students and basically had an obligation to keep them employed, I felt. But also I was getting calls on the phone constantly, when's your turbine ready? When's your turbine ready? So the pressure from the public was tremendous. Plus I wanted to do it. Plus I had people that were employed. So it just sort of snowballed. It was just tiny steps turned into bigger steps, and pretty soon we had 10 employees and we were selling systems and manufacturing them and that sort of thing.
If you look at renewable energy, there's an incredible amount going on with very large companies. GE is really big in wind, for example. You've got a lot of solar players. The thing is, those companies actually move very slowly. Whereas small entrepreneurs can adapt to market conditions very quickly. That makes me think of Dow Jesse. It's people like him that are really going to help renewable to take off. You need both. You need activity at the top end, because people like the GEs and other large companies are going to sell in bulk to very large wind projects. And it's those very large wind projects that are going to give us the economies of scale. But at the same time, you also need people like Dow Jesse to do things that are outside those very large wind projects. You know, when you're a farmer in Saskatchewan, you're not going to go to GE and ask them to build you a huge wind farm or to get a 70-foot turbine. If you're buying it from someone who's practically your neighbour, another small guy like yourself, then you're much more likely to trust that person. It's going to be much easier to work with them. The capital expenditure won't be as much. Essentially, you're talking to someone that you can understand. So these local entrepreneurs are extremely important to our economy and extremely important to the advancement of renewable energy.
Our net metering program is designed for systems, environmentally preferred technologies, we call it. Typically those are wind. 90% of our systems are wind. The net metering system is you use this environmentally preferred technology under 100 kilowatts, is what we allow in the program, and you put it on your property and you produce power primarily to offset your consumption. And then any excess that you develop that's produced would then be sent to the grid, and the grid acts as kind of like your battery, right? It's where you store it, and it's stored as a credit.
When this turbine produces power, its initial production of power goes straight into our system. If it's producing more than our system is using, then it goes into the grid, and that is something we can collect back again, and that was a selling point to us.
We've done a lot with big wind, and we're still deploying big wind, but a lot can be done at the bottom too. Small wind can make a big impact on a global scale. This all can happen, and it can happen overnight if we had the gumption to do it.